The man who wants to return to the White House for a second term says he should not have left it in the first place. The woman who aspires to become the first woman to sit in the Oval Office says she will protect the democracy he threatens and unite the country he has divided. Both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have presented stark visions for the future if they lose this election. Trump says the country will go to hell and become communist immediately if he loses, while Kamala Harris describes her opponent as a fascist who wants unchecked power. These are truly the divided states of America. Now, how did the debate in the United States become so polarized? And what does this mean for the US and the world? Joining me on the News9 Plus show today are screenwriter and podcaster Advaita Kala, Ambassador Jayant Dasgupta, Dr. Monish Torangbam, Director of the Kalinga Institute of Indo-Pacific Studies, Dr. Vineet Prakash from the JNU, and in the studio I have with me my colleague Deepak Badana. Welcome to the News9 Plus show. Ambassador Dasgupta, I want to start by asking you this. Why is this being called the most consequential elections in the United States since the Civil War era of the 19th century?
I think the most important aspect of this election is that there are such divergent views between the two candidates.
Yes.
Whether it is immigration or abortion or unemployment or what had happened during the period 2016 to 2020 when President Trump had his stint as president. Because President Trump thinks that, and he says so very clearly,
yes,
that America was doing tremendously well. Of course, he's given to using these extreme statements, and he says that it will again come back and do even better.
Right.
So, and Kamala Harris, of course, has put it on balance, saying that good things have happened, but it could have been better. Now, I think the other point is that Kamala Harris, in the recent past, few weeks, has been talking of consensus building. She's been saying that if you don't vote for me, if you don't agree with what I say, you're not my enemy. You are my neighbor.
Yes.
We are all together in this for you, all of us. But President Trump has struck a very, very discordant note, and right through his campaign, and he has been othering the people who are not seeing eye to eye with him, or who are likely to vote against him.
Right.
And
absolutely.
And some of the people who have shared the days with him
yes,
have been very sarcastic about Latinos, for instance, about people from Puerto Rico, about African Americans, and about immigrants in general, because I think there is a very broad brush approach that is being adopted by President Trump to scaremonger the people of the US into thinking that immigrants are criminals and murderers who have somehow managed to sneak into the US from their own countries. And the US would be much better off by sending them back.
Right, absolutely.
So
very polarized debate. Absolutely. Ambassador Dasgupta, very polarized debate, very sharply, dividing the entire US electorate of a kind that we haven't seen before. And Advaita, you've been educated in the US, you travel there often. Have you seen the United States as divided as it is today? In the sense that it's almost like there are two different countries, red and blue, inhabiting the same geographical space. Tell us what you're hearing.
Well, yes, I was in the US during Bill Clinton's time, so that was a good time for all, wasn't it? Including the POTUS, so to speak, in the White House. But, subsequently, you are right. This is a very polarized election. The battle lines have been drawn very clearly. I think this parallels to a large extent with sort of the leftist idea of identity politics and
Right.
slamming it, be it in institutions, be it in on college campuses, be it in the
Right.
politics. This sort of identity politics has taken hold, which is very dangerous for any society, not just for the Americans. But suddenly, these are not Americans anymore. They are either defined by gender or race or class or or sexuality.
Yes.
And all of these sort of agendas are coming at a head on a head-on collision.
Yes.
So if on one side you have the abortion debate,
Yes.
which the Dems are kind of really kind of planking, on the other side you have the issue of trans men entering
Yes.
into safe spaces for women, which the Republicans are kind of objecting to, and a lot of women are objecting to. So, it's not a clear battle wherein you can say, okay, women are pro Kamala because of the abortion issue
Right.
and anti Trump, or people are pro Trump because he's standing with biological women as opposed to being with Kamala,
Yes.
who has a policy, for example, of wanting illegal immigrants who want to go through transition, for
Yes.
example, or prisoners who want to transition to the female gender, for the state to cover their medical expenses.
Yes.
And the other big issue is, of course, there is a lot of conversation about illegal immigration, especially in the border states, of course. But this is a message now that is carrying forward across the country, and that again is a very divisive issue, with one side demonizing immigrants and broad
Yes.
brush stroking them, but on the other hand also saying that you had something like 2,500 immigrants a day or some figure like that coming into the
Yes.
illegal immigrants coming into the United States. And coming to the black vote, I don't think it's a shoe-in for Kamala.
Right.
I think that is something that one cannot take for granted, because what happened is the legal issues that Trump has gone through, the way the institutions, the judicial system has targeted him, as well as the assassination attempts, have created a sympathy, especially amongst African American men who
Yes.
identify with that kind of persecution from law-making authorities.
Right.
So it's a very interesting election. I think it's really close to call,
Yes.
but I think it's as defined as we would like to assume that, the liberals, the minorities are with Kamala. And for
Yes.
that matter, the Arabs, the Arab Americans, they're very upset about Gaza. And this
Yes.
is, Trump is a guy who spoke about a Muslim ban. But you
Yes.
see, Dearborn, Michigan, the Arab community is saying, we want peace, so we're going to vote Trump.
We're going to
So
vote Trump, indeed. Yeah, Advaita, and you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. This is the kind of divided polity that we've not seen possibly in decades. It's class, race, gender, sexuality, everything is literally divided down the middle. It's either it's red or it's blue, which leads me to believe that there could be at least one side that wouldn't accept the results of the next couple of hours. And Dr. Vineet Prakash, this is a question for you. Given that we've seen the kind of violence on Capitol Hill, that where one side, the Republican side, or more specifically the Donald Trump side, did not accept the verdict, would you fear you could actually see violence if the Republicans, if Trump didn't win, there would be violence of the kind we saw very recently?
There's a very real possibility of some kind of violence happening, because we can say, or we can observe, that Trump has been prepping his supporters for some kind of action in case he is not able to pass the 270 marks. So
Right.
he's been prepping them that if it happens, then it would be because some kind of cheating, some kind of fraud took place.
Right.
And when you have pumped your supporters into thinking like that, then at some point that anger, that frustration can boil over, which happened in 2021, and it can happen again. And that's a very real possibility.
Right.
So depending on what the election results are and how it pans out, so that remains to be seen. We are still a couple of hours away, or at least a day or two away, before the picture would be clear.
Right. Absolutely.
In case,
yes.
yeah, in case it is Kamala, then definitely the possibility of violence is not Kamala winning then the violence might take place. But if Trump is winning, definitely, then we can be rest assured that things would be more peaceful, because it is MAGA Trump supporters who are more inclined towards violence as of
Yes,
now, what we
right.
can see.
MAGA Trump supporters more inclined towards violence. But Dr. Manish, how did the United States get to this point where, we are actually debating, violence in the United States like we would, like say the United States would debate violence in possibly a third world country, and here we are talking of, land of the free and home of the brave. How did the US get to this point where, you're talking of violent, means if one side does not win the election?
Thank you, Sandeep. I think, first of all, let me put this across that sometimes I think we overstate the decency of American democracy,
Right.
and also the peaceful nature in which it plays out. Definitely in recent history, this is unprecedented.
Right.
And that unprecedentedness came from the experience of January 6th, 2021.
Yes.
Otherwise, American history, in its long history, has had a lot of experiences of violence and chaos during
Right.
elections.
Right.
And I think talking about how Americans put this election across as the most historic in recent times, uh, taking apart American penchant for hyperboles. They're
Yes.
used to hyperbole that is the greatest nation in the world, is the greatest election in the world. So
Yes.
having set aside that, I
Right.
think it's unprecedented because one, this the advent of a cultural, socio-economic, political phenomena like Trump, whether you
Yes.
like it or not. I think that's a major marker in American election that started in 2016.
Right.
And I think the return of the way in which Trump has returned so strongly,
Yes.
and so close to the White House is something that, again, many were not, not really anticipating in the way it has happened.
Right.
And I think it's also unprecedented election, not just because of this particular election, but also because of the way in which the Democratic Party, as well as, and particularly the GOP, the Republican Party, has changed from the bottoms up.
Right.
And I think advent of a personality like Trump loyalists, the MAGA movement, the remnants of the Tea Party movement in the US,
Yes.
I think that has proven a groundswelling of the Republican Party. And if Trump were to win this election hands
Yes.
down, it is going to change the Republican Party almost beyond recognition.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think
yeah, that's a
and
good
I
point
think
there,
that is-
Dr. Monish. Yes.
I think
Trump
that-
is going to
that's going
change.
to
He already has changed the Republican Party beyond recognition because, for the first time you have, the prospect, Deepak, of former Republican presidents distancing themselves from a Republican candidate. And you have the exact opposite in the Democratic camp, where you have, Presidents Bill Clinton and Barack Obama coming out and vote, encouraging voters to vote for Kamala Harris. But you don't see the Bushes and the Cheneys supporting Donald Trump, which leads one to believe that Trump is a phenomenon all by himself. He's captured the Republican Party, and as Dr. Monish was saying, he's going to take it to a different level. But do you think that, Deepak, reports of the United States demise are greatly exaggerated? We've been talking about, the US power is down, it's ebbing, the global south is rising, Russia and China are coming up. And you think that all of this is, a myth?
Let me just give you some figures and they'll do the talking. So let's start economically. The United States is a country that contributes something like 26.4% of the global GDP.
That's staggering.
This is a nation that is
more than
contributing
1/4 of the world's GDP.
22% of the UN budget and
Yes.
27% of UN peacekeeping budget.
Right.
Now let's look at it militarily. This is a nation which contributes 37% of the global defense budget.
Right.
To put it another way, it is more than the rest of the 20 nations. The next
So the
top
US
20
outspends the next
20 nations. That includes
nations.
China and Russia and India
Everyone,
and everyone
yes.
else. Right. And then their ability to project power.
Right.
This is a nation that has over 780 bases across the world.
Right.
It is the only true superpower in the sense that it has the ability to project power within 24 hours in whatever corner of the world.
Right.
There's simply no other country
There's
which
no
can
other
compare
country,
with
and not in the foreseeable future, Deepak. With the statistics you mentioned, 700 bases, that would take the rest of the world decades to put together. What to talk of just one country, and certainly not China. And China has obviously no, interest of taking the place of the US. It possibly can't do that either. But Advaita, we were talking, Deepak and me, just before the show began, and we said that, what is it that what Indian politicians can teach the United States? They can teach them about, the peaceful transfer of power, for instance, not shooting each other's candidates, not trying to assassinate candidates for sure. What is it that, where the Indian democracy literally leads the way when it comes to the elections? I mean, we are not getting into the thing of our, EVMs being far superior to what the US has there. But what are the ways in which the Indian political system is way ahead of the United States?
In many ways. And, at one point, on one side, you have the MAGA supporters.
Yes.
And on the other hand, you have the Antifa supporters, right? So let's not discount their propensity for violence. So I think it's a very, very sketchy situation as of now, because depending on who wins, there's going to be a lot of distrust in the electoral outcome and a lot of negativity around it, because the lines are so closely divided. And I need not mention that this is a country where people are armed, they have right to arms.
Yes.
So it's quite a frightening situation in just the way it's all been laid out. I really do hope, because I do love the country, I do love the US, is that it is a peaceful transition of power.
Yes.
There is, violence is not something that one would want to see in the oldest democracy in the world. However, it is time that the Americans stop talking down to democracies, and especially the largest democracy in the world, which is ours. And you're absolutely right.
Yes.
We have not encountered these situations wherein, the peaceful transfer of power. Yes, there have been quibbles about the EVM not working, but I think, so often the opposition has used it so casually. When they win, EVMs are fine. When they lose, the EVMs are hacked. That the general public, who are really the people who can bring out a situation on the streets, don't really buy their complaints. So in that sense, we've been fortunate that our public, and I give credit more to the public than to the politicians, because they have tried all of this. They have tried to incite this kind of distrust over EVMs in our country as well, over the transparency or the operation of the Supreme Court. They've done that as well. So every institution in the last decade has been challenged and has been cast with a shadow. Luckily, our public, our general public, people like you, me, and those of us who are not in political life, have been able to see through that and not take to the streets and create any kinds of issues. Unfortunately, in the US, I don't think they have that buffer. And I think this is where they need to actually speak with the largest democracy in the world, because of the number of elections we have and how we conduct them. And yes, we do have more instances of localized political violence. There's no doubt about that, and that is absolutely condemnable. What you see happening in West Bengal is a horror and a disgrace to democracy. But we don't have this kind of negativity or violence or possibility of violence across as far as the transfer of power is concerned.
Yes, absolutely. Well put, Advaita, and the fact that the world's largest democracy could teach the world's oldest democracy a couple of lessons, and it's not just about the EVMs, but it's also about the peaceful transfer of power that we witnessed in India. There's literally not been one instance in the entire Indian Republic's existence where one party has refused to concede the election to the other.
Or for that matter, the candidates being shot at.
Well, that's a function of the gun laws, the liberal gun laws that exist in the United States. That's a separate topic, Deepak. But I want to ask Ambassador Dasgupta this. Ambassador Dasgupta, where did we get to the point when, the United States, one party is refusing to concede the election? It increasingly looks like there could be violence over there, which is why you have the National Guard units and all moving into place, just in case one side doesn't win. But What are the lessons really that India could give the United States in a situation like this? Of course, these could just be, like our directive principles of state policy that we can advise, but there's no way we can make that mandatory. But what's your take on this, Ambassador Dasgupta? This Damocles sword that hangs over the U.S. election system that's going to be, produce the results a few hours from now.
The first thing that I would like to point out is that Trump cannot be, cannot represent the entire Republican electorate or people who vote for Republican candidates, including Trump, in this election. And I'm sure there are a large number of right-thinking people who would like to, if there is a fair election to their mind, they would like to concede defeat if it comes to that. But Trump, the way he has been behaving, and he has been behaving since 2016, he just doesn't accept defeat in anything. Whether it's a court case where he says everything has been cooked up, or an election where he says that there has been a lot of jugglery and misfeasance. So in this election also, I think 2-3 days ago, he made a statement saying that the Democrats are trying to steal this election and we have to be very careful, and we cannot let them get away with it. So he's already setting the stage.
He's setting the stage for what could unfold.
For exhorting his or inciting his hardcore fringe supporters with extreme views and with an inclination to take to violence, resort to violence. The kind of thing which we saw on the 6th of January 2021. That is exactly what he is trying to set the stage for. So that if he loses, he thinks that he can save face by resorting to violence and by claiming that the election was again stolen from him as it was in 2020.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Dr.
I think
Vineet
we have to
Prakash,
differentiate between Trump and the Republicans. Trump is an extreme example. But the Republican Party, I don't think, subscribes to many of his views, extreme views. And that is, I think, a pointer in that direction is, as you mentioned, George Bush and the others, prominent Republican leaders, didn't come to campaign for him or exhort voters. In fact, there are instances of several prominent Republicans saying that please don't vote for Trump, vote for the other side.
Right. Absolutely unprecedented situation there in the US elections. And Dr. Vineet Prakash, do you believe that Trump will concede defeat? Or is it going to be Capitol Hill 2.0? What's your take on this? We'll know this in a few hours from now. So we'll be kind of, please be a soothsayer for us and tell us what the future holds.
So that is one thing we should not do as academics. But yeah, definitely the possibility is definitely there. But I think the US security system would be better prepared for something of that sort happening this time around. So the likelihood of things descending to the level which happened on January 6th last time should not be happening this time. But Trump, as Ambassador Dasgupta just mentioned, he's the kind of person, the kind of personality who thinks he can never lose. And the word defeat is not there in his dictionary. So I don't think he's going to accept a defeat if he loses the election. And he's, of course, going to come out with some kind of excuse, concoct some kind of story to explain that the election was stolen from him. But again, these are things which remain in the future. For as of now, let's hope things go forward peacefully and both sides, whoever loses, accepts the results of the election. So that would be good.
Accept the results of the elections as they would do in India. Peaceful transfer of power. Dr. Monish, do you see a peaceful transfer of power taking place in the United States, or is it going to be Capitol Hill 2.0? Given how closely, the two sides are, it's literally neck and neck.
I think it really boils down to the results in the swing state. And how close the result really is. If there is a big margin, between Kamala winning and Trump losing, I think the chances of January 6th happening again is quite minimal. But if it were to be very close, and Trump has already called January 6th as a day of luck, right?
Right.
So from that you can already sense that there's already an upswelling, at least in the fringe elements
Yes.
of the Trump loyalists, that they're ready for something. But it really boils down to the results, and when do we really know the results? It
Right,
may be
absolutely. It all just boils
in
down
a
to the
day or
results,
two.
Dr. Monish, indeed. And we'll know that in a few hours from now, one of the most closely contested elections in US history. And the understanding that we have from all of our panelists here are that whichever way the United States votes today, on the 5th of November, it's unlikely to turn back the clock on what we are seeing today as a political reality. The fact that the United States of America could well be the divided states of America. Thank you so much, Advaita Kala, Ambassador Das Gupta, Dr. Monish, Dr. Vineet Prakash for joining us this evening as we are discussing the US elections that are on halfway across the world. Thank you very much. My colleague Deepak Badana continues to stay with me in the studio.